Take me round the world and back again, as I'm searching for my soul out there. Oh, there's something that I'm wondering, where I'm going when my story ends. It doesn't even matter anyway, no. We're focused and I'm coping with the pain, yeah. We're only getting older by the day, yeah. We're only getting older. It doesn't even matter anyway, no. We're focused and I'm coping with the pain, yeah. We're only getting older by the day, yeah. We're only getting older. Keeps me up all night, keeps me, got these thoughts that keep me up all night. Keeps me up all night, keeps me, get these thoughts that keep me up all night. Keeps me, so I'm alive.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you live. It is Aris Kakone. I'm back again on Neoliberalism, which is the English edition. We had one like in the past, so now we have a second edition now. And then we're very lucky today. We have a very, very special guest. That is basically a library. This guy is so smart that I got the privilege to call him. He was my mentor at some point. He was my mentor. He told me about like so many different books. He initiated me into reading different books. And then I was a reader, but that was not really focused. It was more about like getting knowledge. But this guy taught me how to be very specific on what I was looking for in order to create different contexts and concepts into my mind, which are still relevant up to now when it comes to social justice, when it comes to spirituality. He put me on Tao Te Ching. Anyway, so let me introduce you without further notice, Richie Bates. Hi, Richie.
That. And just to clarify, when you're saying, I'm a library and everything like that, I mean, that's really sweet of you. But I just want to clarify that if that's how you perceive me, the teacher's role is just to make sure the student surpasses the teacher. Okay. So that's where we're at. So just to acknowledge that your knowledge base is probably far better than mine is now. All right.
I'm not too sure of it, to be honest with you.
Well, I think it's an important thing to start off with, isn't it? I think
that's a good way to start with.
Knowledge needs to be shared, and then people can go off on their new journeys and get more knowledge. And I think, that's where our relationship was, Aris. I think I was really lucky you came into my life at the point you did, which is obviously beneficial for you, which is nice to hear as well. And it's taking where I was at, and then you explored that down a different route, and you've expanded on that. And I think that is the role, isn't it? It's just to share that information to enable nurturing and growth and further exploration as we get old.
Absolutely. And then, to be honest, I think the pleasure is similar on my end. It's like when I met you, that was the perfect timing for me to explore different venue of my brain or my mind, or to expand my consciousness in a way. Yeah. That is very appreciative for my end. But not just that, you introduced me back to nature.
Yeah, that's the place to go, isn't it? It's like knowledge is nothing unless you've got an environment where it can grow, and we need our environment.
Absolutely. So let's get on with it. Let's go straight to the topic today, if you are comfortable with it, of course. So the topic for today will be, what is the impact of the neoliberalism and the new technology on the nucleus family and the modern family structure?
Yeah.
Do you think that title a little bit complicated, or what is your thought on that?
No, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's complicated. I mean, I think there's three core elements in there, and they're all quite fluid, isn't it? So it gives a perspective. So I think there is a lot around there, and I think within this fluid and ever-changing environments. I mean, which point did you want to start with them first, Aris? I mean, because what we're looking at here is conceptual ideologies, which are always branching out and fragmenting and forming different things. We've got this core thing of neoliberalism. So should we start with that?
Just bear with me on this. Yeah. So Zach, I think we need to start with a disclaimer first. It's like, regardless when two people are talking about different subjects, having like an analysis and everything, is that we never talk on absolute. Nobody can talk in absolute. We just like basically we talk about different concepts and that, but it's purely based on the fact that it is an opinion based on fact, but it's not absolute. Okay. So I think you can start whichever way that you wish.
Yeah, well, I think the important thing is, I mean, because you're the person that's inquiring. So if you start off with sort of like where, I mean, I suppose the question is, where did this question form from? What brought you to bringing this question forth? Really, let's have a look at that.
Okay. I think the best way to put it is like I've been traveling a lot in my life, as you know already. It's like originally, like, I'm from Africa. I grew up in Congo, and then I live in Belgium. I live in many, many countries, Canada, I live in the UK. And I noticed that when you're traveling, you can see that the different economical systems can change depending on the culture of the environment that you're living in. And then in that specific context, what I would say, since the world is becoming like a global village, and then the neoliberalism or the capitalism, the new form of capitalism that we have now, is affecting or uniforming. Everybody is fitting into the same box when it comes to the culture and the economy on every single country that I've been. I can see the changes going through. And then we can only focus on the economical form that is going on at the moment. We won't be focusing on the different trends going on in there or social movement. So what I'm trying to say is, even in Congo, I went back to Congo recently, and I noticed that even the family structure is no longer what it used to be.
Right.
It was like, if I look back in the UK, I look back, that's me just explaining the context, yeah? I look back in Canada, and then the family structure is not what it used to be. Maybe I've got some kind of nostalgia coming from a different epoch. However, growing up with a father and a mother plus 2 point kids, that was a typical early bird, I think. That was early bird? What was it in the end? Early
Well, I
bird?
mean, that's your experience then. I mean, I don't know what it was like before that. It might be more community raising a child than, a family unit.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
again, it's the fluidity of stuff, isn't it, there?
Absolutely. It's like in Africa back in the days, that's why I can remember, it took a village to raise a boy. Everybody was involved, uncles, grandfather, grandmother, everybody, even the neighbors. But now the family structure has switched because the daddy is basically the government in a way. What do you think of it?
Did you say the daddy is the government?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, lots of people probably contest that, won't they? But I mean, I suppose, the key thing is when you look at the nucleus, well, the family network. I mean, yeah, it's changed significantly. I mean, I haven't traveled as much as you have, Aris, so I haven't got the comparisons there. But I think that when I was growing up, what am I now, nearly 50? When I was growing up, so it's been young, so like divorce and separation was becoming a trend and stuff like that. I've seen lots of changes that have gone on. Also within the family unit as well, there's been more expectations that you need one or more than one person to earn a living to be able to, to be able to survive. And so there's been some transformations that have impacted on the family unit. And and I think there's definitely a move away. I mean, I think there's still sort of like a patriarchal sort of like type role, but I think it's diluted an awful lot now.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that's still considered. So I don't know if daddy, what was the comment you said, daddy is what?
I said that is the government, but let's go back into it because I was talking more like regarding like the lower classes, like working class people and then poor people. That is the government because people that are on benefit, it's like you notice that, especially coming from the black and minority ethnic, which is the group that I belong to. If I have to identify myself in a group, you can clearly see that the government is like a substitution of the daddy, and then we're getting more like single mother family, kids raised by a single mom, than having like the typical traditional structure. I know there's many other parameters that we can take into consideration, but that is my opinion on that. And I think there's an evolution. But going back to the suffragette, that suffragette, the feminist movement back in 1914, and then I think one of the only reasons, that is my opinion, I'm not stating facts. One of the only reasons why they allowed they give the right for women to vote and stuff, that was for them to bring for family to have two income. That's one of the reasons. Despite the fact that they fought for their right, despite the fact that they've done everything that they were supposed to do to take away or to take that right, but it was still good for the government. And you can see that the change of the family structure traditionally start occurring in terms of both parents were working and then not enough time to take care of the kids in the traditional way that our ancestors were accommodated to. What do you think of it?
Well, yeah, no, and I mean, with the suffragettes and that movement or that social movement at that time and everything, I suppose, looking at, there's a class dynamic and who was being more verbal at that point of time as well. So, when they're looking at the changes, what we've also got in the background there is, we've got the change in industry as well and the changing market. So, I don't know what the, the contextual environment at that point of time to stimulate recognition of equality, but obviously there was a need for that recognition. And maybe it's because, I can imagine, this is just me imagining, if you come from a wealthy family and most of that wealth passes on to the male figure, which it does still in some sort of like small family units at the moment. If a female goes into a marriage and the man takes the wealth from the family inheritance and stuff, it causes a bit of conflict. So I think there might have been a class element involved in that, sort of like that engagement of going there as well. And then we've also got to think about rights for what, because, when we're looking at voting rights as well, during that period of time, I think, certain people weren't allowed to vote. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was age restrictions that were on there. There was class restrictions. Obviously, there was gender restrictions on voting as well. So I think we're in an evolution at that point. I think I'm not very good with my history, but it seemed like there were changes that were happening. And I think, there was a stand for equality for the right of voting from women that came through at that point as well. It's interesting during that point of time when there's conflict just going on as well, isn't there? When we're looking at the world wars or the First World War sort of like happening, the revolutions, we've got Queen Victoria, who's there as well, got the Industrial Revolution. So you've got a whole period of change that's happening within Western societies. What we've also got within that as well is you've got this little island, called the UK or Great Britain, where it's got a great big empire that's going out, and doing other bits and pieces. So maybe it was sort of, there's different elements that need to be considered in there, in the right for equality or the right for access into the wealth that economy has accumulated at that point of time. So, I think there's a lot of things to be considered at that point, and I think with the changes that have happened since then, I think what we do see is that there's a change within the society or that specific civilization that has a butterfly effect as it goes forward, which no doubt we'll move on to anyway.
Absolutely.
I'm going off track, so I think so. I'm going to let you come back in and put me back on track here again, Alex.
But do you think that like the family structure is moving or evolving like in a positive way, or do you think that is...
when you say, is it moving in a positive way? For one, what is a family structure? How is that defined and who defined it? And because just like if we just step back and think, okay, what was the point? I mean, we're looking at survival, aren't we? When we look in the animal kingdom, the nature of a family, or it seems to be an assumption that I make, is that a family unit or a conception of a family unit is to protect and facilitate ongoing reproduction and the longevity or the legacy of that family unit.
Maintain the gene pool, yeah.
Well, yeah, so it's that genetic thing, isn't there? The selfish gene that sort of re-goes and everything. So if you look at, what the family structure was, maybe it's been politically constructed, or maybe it's just grown naturally into this thing and then it's been politically labeled. So, I think, again, when we look back, if we think about if you're working, you'd be working long hours, then you'd need somebody at home if you had kids who looks after the kids. So there's been this divide, there's been, the matriarchal figure in the home or whatever who gives birth to the children, everything is seen as their connection and the man's role to go out. So, I mean, there's that perception. But then also we've got to think about is religiously and culturally that, females were seen in a higher, more supreme place before our Christian civilization as well. So it's like,
absolutely, yeah.
The history of what's made up what a family unit has changed over a significant period of time. I think one of the things that we're seeing now is probably the changes that we're seeing within our lifetimes, rather than within generations. Everything's speeded up. So the concept of a family unit, as defined maybe legally within certain like statutes or acknowledged within certain civilizations or cultures, is maybe archaic in itself, because maybe the family unit or the family structure has evolved consistently over a period of time. And what we're seeing at the moment is a rapid change, which we're not mentally conditioned for to be able to adapt to. But then that replicates everything else that seems to be going on within Western economies, is the changes.
Absolutely, there's a lot of
going
change going on.
So fast. I mean, because if you go back to the suffragettes you mentioned earlier, so early 1900s, and Jesus Christ, we had first flight.
If you don't mind me interrupting you on this, the reason why I mentioned the suffragette was purely based on the fact that I wanted to put like a point in history where the family structure started to change based on the neoliberalism or the capitalistic society, because both parents were working, and which means that they would spend less time with their kids. To me, that was like a first stage of the evolution of the family structure, like in recent history. But I've got another point that I will mention very soon. But allow me to go on a little break, and then that is a little surprise for you. I hope you like it. Okay.
Okay. All right. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
See ya.
Let's go for a little break.
There's a lady who's sure all that glitters is gold, and she's buying stairway to heaven. And when she gets there, she knows if the stores are all closed, with the word she can get what she came for. And she's buying a stairway to heaven. There's a sign on the wall, but she wants to be sure, 'cause you know sometimes words have two meanings. In a tree by the brook, there's a songbird that sings. Sometimes all of our thoughts are misgiven. Oh yeah. Oh, and it makes me wonder, and it's whispered that soon, if we all call a tune, then the piper will lead us to reason, and a new day will dawn for those who stand long, and the forests will echo with laughter. You know, it makes me wonder, yeah. Oh, yeah. And she's buying the stairway to heaven.
And we're back.
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Good. Nice little bit of Led Zeppelin there. Well done.
And I picked the shortest version ever.
Yeah, it did
the original version is like 9 minutes. Lord.
Yeah, it's a classic song. Thank you for that.
Yes, it is. I love it as well. Yeah, you put me into it. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. So, yeah, cool, good.
One of the reasons why I picked this topic, yeah, I think if I have to, probably it's like based on some nostalgia. If I have to remember, when I remember my upbringing, it's like I said, there was purely like a community that raised me into the man that I am now. But I believe that the next generation, regardless in the world, the next generation, because of the capitalistic, I'm not against capitalism, but the new system, economical system that is popping, if I can say it like that, in the world. So they're not taking advantage of the same situation that we had, like living in the community, because as you know, the family first, and then the clan, and after the clan, the community, the tribe, or whatever. And then I noticed that those young people are not getting the same benefit. So my question would be now, if we have to go into like the recent history, like let's say 2009, when the Tory government took over Great Britain, and basically they started to decimate if I have to call it like that, or to cut down on costs or all the fundings for the different Kwango or organization that was taking care of young people, especially the ones that were more likely to or vulnerable because of the social classes. So, what is the impact, if I have to call it neoliberalism or capitalist? What do you think, based on your expertise, yeah? What do you think is the impact on the family structure and then even the future of those young people? And then you have to couple, basically, you have to couple the cuts, the spending cuts, plus privatization as well.
Yeah, there's individualism that's in there as well, isn't there, as an element of that? I
Absolutely.
mean, I think, obviously, when you get a government that comes in place, such as the Conservatives, the Tories, the right, they come in, they're conserving, I suppose, is in the title as well, isn't it? What they believe to be the ideology that defines this culture, But again, it's quite, it's historic, isn't it? It's embedded, and it doesn't really embrace the changes that have occurred since that. I think we had Margaret Thatcher before that, didn't we, in the UK? It's like the 80s and the impact that had. It's changing energy infrastructures and stuff that's going on there. So, but if we look at the recent history of 2009,
Yeah.
then what we've seen is, I suppose, individualism has become has become the dominant element of motivation, I guess. That individuals have their own responsibility for their own life and their own well-being seems to be something that's pushed through. And I think there's been a lot more criminalization that's come through from that change to the economic system. I think politics and economy have been probably more aligned. So, there's opportunities of economic growth. There was the trickle-down effect that came through from Margaret Thatcher. If you don't succeed, then it's your own personal responsibility for not succeeding. And why should the state, spend out to support you in that? Or if you do have, if the state does pay to give you for want of a better word, a living wage, which obviously they don't, it's a punitive measure that keeps you down beyond the threshold, and it limits your ability to climb up the economic ladder as well. So I think if we're looking back at then, it's almost been like, I don't know how to say it, but it's been almost like looking at a way of separating or severing classes from the structure, almost going back to the underclass sort of like type
Absolutely.
approach.
Yeah.
And,
But since you mentioned the underclass, let me just make like a parallel or like a comparison between my experience and yourself. Yeah. When it comes to my experience, I remember it's like I benefited from like some of the funding coming from the Kwango, which helped me to raise different programs that could help like kids coming from the Black and minority ethnic in Plymouth back in the days that were more likely to fall into a life of crime in a way. So I had some funding to provide some kind of services like martial arts, music, basketball, to keep them occupied with some kind of constructive activities, in order for them to have like, to improve their resilience or coping mechanism. So it's like, I don't think that kind of program, like the funding for that kind of program, is still relevant at the moment. So what is the current situation in terms of youth coming from the Black and minority ethnic, coming from the majority, which is the local community? What is the situation at the moment?
Well, I suppose, if you want to do a snapshot on that, I mean, I think, with the changes and cuts that come through, that means that economic viability or ability to participate in what's perceived as enriching activities or opportunities in society are limited. So with that, then your social emotional learning skills are less. There's a less focus on the development of self through interaction with others, because you know where you sit, your skill set, you learn new things, you have different experiences. I think those opportunities for personal enrichment have been decreased. When you decrease personal enrichment, it's almost like it's been denied nutrition. It means that your growth and ability within that society is hindered and limited because you don't get preloaded. Yeah, so you don't get preloaded with the skill set, the language, the narrative, the mechanisms, the things, the opportunities that can facilitate you later on down the life. And I think sometimes those elements are missed off. And when we look at crime, and this is my perception, when we look at crime, we look at gang culture, everybody's looking for a sense of purpose, of a space, a place of belonging. Yes, I mean, there's that. And then also look at the economic thing as well. And it's not saying that everybody's comfortable in that environment. I'm sure if we peeled back, you know, sort of the fronts that everybody put on, there's something deep within that they may not have realized yet that's hidden in there as well. So, you know, there's a lot of things that are taken for granted, you know, but we don't really look at it. I mean, when we look at any situation, we can see it in America as well. Kind of when there's poverty and there's deprivation, there's an increase in sort of like drug use or an increase in crime, etc. The individuals are blamed. That person, that class is blamed. You can see it with sort of black minorities as well, isn't it? It's their culture. They're like that. That's how they've been brought up. You know, they are dangerous individuals. Therefore, we need to make sure that we protect our culture, whatever that is, because when we look at the UK and everything, we're a mixed culture, even though we sort of deny that, you know, German royal family, etc. You know, but there's that denial and there's preservation of this ideology of what they think we are. And so they try and protect that. So I think, you know, the impact is further isolation. I think the further impact is its further costs. And those costs become apparent when, because obviously it's the UK, so revolutions are quite rare. We'll have a few sort of like marches and stuff like that, but I think revolutions don't really occur. We're not like our French, you know, French
Well, if you
counterparts.
don't mind me, Richie, if you don't mind me interrupting you on this, just to piggyback on something that you mentioned earlier on, which was based on the crime rates and everything. There's a situation that I've been very like a whole deal in my heart. That is basically, like I say, I'm from Congo, and then some of my Congo countrymen, like in London especially, it's like from 2010, since the Tory or the conservative government took over, all the way to 2021, I think out of 100% of the knife crime that people got killed by knife were Congolese Congolese descent, like black kids come from Congo. And then out of those 90%, I think there was 90%. Out of them, probably 100% of them, of the Congolese boys that got killed, like knife down in London, all of them are coming from a single mom house.
Yeah.
That is going back to my point when I say earlier on at the beginning, that was probably like a sarcastical joke, but the reality is, I believe and I strongly believe that the government is a daddy now. Because
I understand.
if you look at the statistic, allow me to track this. If you look at the statistic, it's like a family that both parents in a house is less likely that the son will fall into a life of crime because he's still gonna get the guidance. But right now, when I say government is daddy, it's like some of my sisters, if I have to call them my countrymen, pick whoever they want to reproduce. And when they do that, and then when they don't see the role of a man fit, they can get rid of him. They're still gonna get the benefit. They're still gonna get all the advantages that she's getting from the government. So she won't need a man, and she'll be raising kids from different father in the same house with new boyfriend. Just the dynamic is toxic as such. And then this is creating like a negative environment that can encourage the kids that is seeking a sense of belonging or like a higher purpose to join a gang for the sense of family. What do you think of that evaluation?
Well, I mean, I think that's a perspective. Do you know what I mean? I think what we've also got to take into consideration is that, you know, it's a low percentage of females that may have that, if at all, go out and do that. I mean, I think what we've got to look at is culturally, okay, what we've got to look at is that historically females have been perceived as less sexuality, or their sexual identity, their sexual bodies have always been sort of like treated unfairly by the patriarchal society. I think we've got the historic structure of culture as well. If it's based on patriarchy, it always tries to subvert and to control females. You know, so what we've got really is we've got a breakdown in the family unit, which, you know, we've already discussed and everything. So if young women, you know, encountering sexual relationships, you know, what we've got to consider at that point as well as why is it that we at that point in time blamed the females but not the males, you know, in regards to that, because the males came out of that quite, you know, it's quite innocent really, is all the measures in the media and everything. I'm like, oh my God, you know, it's like females this, females that, and single parents and single mothers and everything. There's the whole movement. And it's like, well, why is that? It's because, you know, potentially it could be that culture's perceiving a lack of control, you know, but it's a lack of control over circumstance where in a patriarchal society, they think they can have what they want, or the role of a male is to, you know, get satisfaction from a female. Female satisfaction through sexual intercourse hasn't really been brought into the discussion for a long period of time. Females were just seen as reproducing the next sort of like cohort of potential workers. You know, so there's a whole mishmash. And I think what we've got to be really careful of is that bias is easily constructed, as is against sort of like races. It can be against certain classes or sort of like identities within a society as well. And I think when we're looking at what we're looking at there as well is that the role of a female, you know, as a single parent is not perceived as something that's worthwhile within our sort of like society or our structure. Therefore, it's punished in a way to control it, to prevent it from happening. If we punish them, then nobody else will do it. But then that goes against sort of the natural reproduction. And then what you've also got is you've got communities, you know, so if the communities are fragmented and we're going down to this sort of more of a, you know, a self-centered, you know, a little bit more isolated, you know, where the individual's more responsible for their abilities, then what you do immediately is that you've got the natural process of parenting and bringing up a child within a reduced family unit, but you don't have the village or the community around you to support you. It hinders opportunities of going job. Yeah, so what you do is you immediately impact in somebody that's likely to end up in a space or a place of deprivation. In a space or place of deprivation, you're more likely to have lack of opportunities and experiences to enrich. And if you think about the children within, or the young people within these environments, then their ability to enrich is tainted. And if everybody's feeling the weight of being economically deprived, then within that economic deprivation, that they're going to look at ways and means where they can either escape that, blame somebody, which is usual horizontal blame than vertical, so blaming their family unit or their surrounding area rather than the politics. Because when we're young, we don't realise the impact that our politics or the historical structure of our society impacts. You know, so then it means that their opportunities are a lot less. So then it means that, yes, the young people will, of course, because the political system has created the system where that young person or that family unit is going to be reliant on the state, is going to be more susceptible to crime as well.
I agree, but that was just like something that I hold very dear near my heart when it comes to those kids that are just falling on the street. So, which we have no control over. But going back to my question, do you think that
we do, just to come back in, we do have control, but you know, the control has been more politically aware and minded and everything, and you know, and it's understanding that actually what you do see, you know, of the behavior that's presented usually has a backstory which we don't comprehend.
Absolutely. Nobody knows,
So where prejudice, you know, when our prejudices are informed by a bias that's usually culturally constructed, and that informs our interaction and the way that we perceive the individuals. And that, again, that goes across, you know, races, classes, etc., and gender identity, or, you know, or the sexual identity, etc., you know, where we naturally need bias, but unfortunately, the political system has fueled it to become a negative bias or a negative prejudice.
Before we go into another break, which will be the last break before we end the show, I would like to ask you a question. Do you think that the capitalistic system or capitalism is having the same impact when it comes to different social classes, when it comes to the family structure? Because we were talking about for the past 10 minutes about like the most vulnerable, basically working class or people on the benefit. Yeah, that is reality. There was a specific demographic that we were talking about. So when it comes to the middle class family, and when it comes to the upper class family, and when it comes to the aristocratic family, so do you think that the capitalistic system's got the same influence in terms of the way the family structure is evolving?
Well, evolving or devolving, isn't it? I mean, I think when we look at, you know, with capitalism, again, it's like we look at the rate of economic development, and we're in the fourth industrial revolution at the moment, which is sort of like the tech evolution. You know, I can't afford a fucking e-car. Excuse me for swearing. I don't know if that's allowed. I can't afford
you can do whatever you like.
Okay. So I can't afford an e-car. Therefore, you know, I've still got a diesel car at the moment, you know, because I can't afford to buy a new one where I'm at. So I'm a polluter. Do you know what I mean? So obviously you've got the environmental stuff there. But what we've got is within the fourth industrial revolution, within capitalism, is that you've got new goods that are coming out. We've got tech that we're communicating on now. You know, we're still encountering through lines of work and everything, communities or individuals that haven't got tech or have got tech, but they've got no Wi-Fi. You know, we've got a lack of public Wi-Fi access points within areas. I mean, London might be different, but when we look in the southwest or different sort of like, you know, rural areas and everything, that infrastructure is not there. And when we're looking at families and we're thinking about this comes back down to sort of like the culture as well. When we're looking at education You know, is education relevant and up to speed with the developments within the industrial or within the economy? So if we're looking at the fourth industrial revolution, which is quite digitalized and it's breaking out and it's changing, it's becoming something amazing. So there's great opportunities in there if you've got the right skill set to begin with.
Absolutely.
You know, so the impact on that is stability within jobs. And, you know, say, you know, if you work for, you know, a government or something like that, the stability in jobs in the economic environment is not guaranteed. There is no guarantee of employment, you know, because everything is in flux. People are fearing, you know, artificial intelligence, you know, impacting on roles, jobs, musicians.
Richie, allow me to interrupt you on this one. You took away my point. I was supposed to introduce the technology aspects of it, but that's fine. Let's take a break.
But it blends it. Everything blends, and nothing can be seen as a singular thing.
That is why I put technology with the capitalist system. So let's jump into the next song, and then you will see that this guy was a visionary. Okay, he was talking about it back in the 90s. Okay? Let's take a little break. We'll be back in a minute.
All right.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think the next song, the title of this song, probably embodies the empty chair that's been left there for the recipient who couldn't pick up his award tonight, Lee Xiaobo. So this track is called Virtual Insanity. Should be small. Who can tell what magic spells will be doing for us? And I'm giving all my love to this world, only to be told I can't see, I can't breathe, no more will we be. And nothing's gonna change the way we live, cause we can always think but never give. And now that things are changing for the worse, see, oh, it's a crazy world we're living in. Just can't see that half of us immersed in sin is all we have to give. These futures made of virtual insanity now always seem to be governed by this love we have for useless twisting of new technology. Oh, now there is no sound, for we all live underground. And I'm thinking what a mess we're in. Hard to know where to begin. If I could slip the sacred ties of earth that man has made. Now every mother can choose the color of her child. That's not nature's way. Well, that's what is it yesterday. There's nothing left to do but pray. I think it's time to find a new religion. Oh, it's so insane to synthesize another strain. Something in these futures that we have to feed on. Futures made of virtual insanity now always seem to be governed by this love we have for useless twisting of new technology. Oh, now there is no sound, but we all have underground. You know it just living in.
And we back. So now we're gonna approach like the last part of the show, yeah? Richie, do you think that we're going through like a virtual insanity? Was Jamie Roque from Manchester? Do you think that he was some kind of visionary? Because
go on.
Yeah, I'm claiming him from Manchester.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, it might have been. I mean, I don't know the lyrics on that one. I was never really a Jamiroquai fan. I just couldn't do the movements. But you know, if we're looking at virtual insanity, then in the context of you know,
we was talking about it back in 1994, I think.
Yeah, I mean, all we've got to do is look at Terminator as well, isn't it? And
oh yeah,
Terminator, Blade Runner.
We're deep into it.
Yeah, you know, so there's those different elements out there. But I mean, I suppose, yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, you think about, I mean, just go back again. You think about suffragettes when we talked about that, early 1900s. first flight, early 1900s. We're reaching out to the planets now. We're trying to go beyond the moon. We've got so many satellites and so much rubbish that's flying around as well. So if you think about the development within that period of time, specifically, I suppose, from the 60s onwards to where we're at now, I suppose there's another jump in from the 80s onwards, and we're hitting another jump now. Everything's going really fast. But the thing that's happening now is when we're talking about virtual insanity is that I've got 3 screens that I work with on home, So I've got screen where my emails are coming in. I've got one that I'm working on and a document I can reference so I can see where I'm at. And when I try and switch off after that, it takes me a long period of time. I used to use alcohol as a way to sort of like chill out and settle the mind. I'll try and walk if I can walk. If I haven't, I might try CBD oil. I might try something else. Other people might have there's different ways of how you chill out. And I think everything's got so fast.
Yeah, but if you don't mind to bring back like the point that you mentioned earlier on that I cut you off because I wanted to introduce the virtual insanity bit.
Okay.
So basically we're talking about like even like the interaction amongst like families member, the interaction like within the different social classes, like it's just different. People are more addicted to the phone. It's like me, I'm more comfortable talking to someone living in the US right now over the phone than meeting face to face. That narcissism, what do you think of it? Like, don't you think they can affect the family structure, the way people used to bond together, like having like a common goal or moving together as a unit, as a community?
Yeah, no, I think it's more to do with the social structure rather than just the family structure, because everything's, everything's wrapped around. You think about the individual, then the familial, and then you've got the local community, then the society, the town, you've got everything that's all like compounds and packs on it. And you can see it. I mean, films are changing now that, if they're having a disaster and everything, they have to be in a mobile dead spot, so they can't call for help, so mode of communication is there.
Have you heard what they're trying to do in Hollywood? Basically, Richie, they're trying to most of the people like in the background, background actor. They're trying to use AI to replace them.
Yeah, well, that works in, when we look at the Industrial Revolution, if it's the way the economy goes and it increases income or profit but reduces cost, then it goes that way. So I think all of that does, and we can look. I mean, sometimes when I don't watch TV that often. When I watch a TV and an advert comes on, there's a couple of adverts there, just the whole family on phones. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what it's about, but it's just like, so that is going to distract communication, the style of communication. Even if you think about text messaging and stuff like that, the language that's used, the acronyms and everything is shorter, the smiley faces, we are succinctly, at one point, we're going to go back just to making sounds, short, monosyllabic sounds that are a form of communication. So the art of communication is definitely declining. The art of communication within a work environment is definitely declining. And when we're out and about, how do we communicate with people when our communities now are, not all of our communities, but our communities can be virtual, so having a virtual relationship where I today could be whoever I wanted to be, Aris, and I'm talking to you. Other people may not know me, but I can present myself as something totally different. And if I come across confidently enough and people think that I'm saying something that resonates with them, then they might believe that, so got this potential of breaking down the family unit. Whereas if we go back to sort of like single parent families and everything, my parents divorced, a different environment, stuff like that. But if I saw somebody that could give me something to fill that gap, then I'll probably go down. I could be an occult member, and I think that's what we see a lot of online. Is there's a lot of spaces and places where people think, oh my God, it's where I'm at now, even though I'm not worldly wise. I resonate with that. I connect with what you're saying. I feel that anger, that frustration, or whatever it is you're saying. So there's different communities, and I think there's a lot of invasion on personal space and personal growth that's not as enriching. So yes, capitalism, because it's chasing the money, and then
absolutely a new phone every single year.
Yeah, and it'll chase that, which has an environmental impact anyway, doesn't it? Just sort of trying to look at recycling of phones and everything now. But then, go on.
If you don't mind, a lot of things that most people don't talk about it. Let's say that basically you go home and then you don't know where you put your phone.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people that can go into people are addicted to the phone now. Social media, lives,
they've invited watches now, though, haven't they? They've invited watches, so you can ask your smartwatch where your phone is. I mean, I've got one that does that,
Not just the addiction bits of it, but the mental health, like the narcissistic, whatever approach that people are having on it. So not going back to the family structure, but don't you think that as humans, as human, as a social group or whatever. But you think that this can have an impact on way, not just we interact with each other, but just the way we feel about each other. Because most people are more dependent to the likes, like the culture has shifted to the point that we can do this show, and then if we have 2 likes, I can have a depression, for instance.
Like confirmation of identity.
Validation, and all that external stimulus or validation.
Yeah, it's addictive. I mean, it is addictive, isn't it? I mean, because if you see about that, I mean, this is the thing we see with young people with increased anxieties now, because due to body image or perceptions and stuff like that, because everything's there, you know, it does create a sickness. Because I no longer do Facebook because I just get sick and tired. Everyone's having this brilliant life, and sometimes my life is shit, but they're just showing elements of their life that is good. And it's the same when you look at, you know, celebrity status, celebrities who I've never seen before. I don't know how they've become a celebrity. I think it's because they did a celebrity show. When they've been a celebrity show, they're now a celebrity on another show. And there's these aspirations of, you know, what beauty is, how we should be, how we should talk. Those aspirations and those idols are just all over the place now, which is just coming down. And it's very confusing. So if you're thinking about, you know, young people looking for sources of reassurance of identity, when we look, I suppose one of the good films is like The Who's Quadrophenia, just a sense of identity. You know, you've got the mods and the rockers, and he goes with the nice shiny sort of like moped thing and everything, trying to fit in to sort of like specific things where maybe, you know, before it was punks, it was rockers, you know, bikers. The groups you can join is just
Richie, going back to my point, if you don't mind me interrupting you.
No,
going back to my point, it's like regardless now of your social class, I think the government or the economical system, the capitalistic system, because it's the oligopoly of your industry, are the daddies, because they're dictating the trends. The way people act, they have to adapt to the environment. They have to adapt to the social trends, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, they have to adjust. I mean, I think this is where neoliberalism kicks in, isn't it? Because, you know, is it government or is it economy? You know,
I would say
who's
economy.
leading who? They're blending together, you know. So who's really in control? You know, if we look at then who's in control of the market? If we look at the wealth margin and we look at the deprivation and stuff like that, what we've got now is you've got this model that just seems to generate where market needs might influence, you know, politics or political decisions. You know, as we still haven't got rid of, you know, oil and coal, and we're not really embracing wind power and stuff like that because, you know, there's a cost margin there and there's money to be made. So we're in this real, I don't know what it is, but it's a state of perplexion that I don't think there's a clear route of. So hopefully there's going to be an evolution that we sprout out of it a different space and place, but I'm not sure what that looks like at the moment.
Yeah, allow me to go off topic for a bit. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I want your perspective on it, please. So basically, I don't know. I think you are fully aware about what's going on in the world at the moment. It's like
as best as I can.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say to you is like I'm talking about like for the past, let's say, since the British Empire all the way to America, if I have to call it empire, America dominance. So it's like the Western world, if I have to call it like that, the Western society or Western culture was the most dominant one. And then for the first time since I was born, we can clearly see that basically people like the Middle East, Russia, all them countries, and plus people in Africa are rejecting Western values at the moment. I'm not even talking about the war in Ukraine. I'm talking about Western values when it comes to introducing even the LGBTQ. It's been a lot of issues in Africa. They don't want to deal with it. Introducing like the Western dominance when it comes to culture. I'm not even talking economically yet. I'm talking about culture. People are rejecting it. Do you know what I mean? So where do you see that this is going when it comes to Western culture? When I say Western, it's the Anglo-Saxon culture, American, UK, NATO, basically, culture, and then member state culture. Where do you see that going? Since it's like, I think a lot of people like in Asia, a lot of people in the Middle East, a lot of people in Africa are rejecting it now in a way that I'm talking about culture. I'm not talking about anything else.
Yeah.
What do you think that it is going when it comes to the influence and then the economy that comes with it afterward?
Well, I mean, I just think everything's in a great period of flux. I think if you look at the Western civilizations, from my perspective, they might have restrained and held different civilizations or different sort of like non-Western sort of like societies down a little bit. I think, when we're looking at Western culture that has tried to dominate, which has been sort of, and it still probably is dominating when we're looking at production. Those production things are changing. But I mean, I suppose the great thing is, I mean, if, say, for a local example, we look at Brexit, it's that we are the best and we can be self-sufficient, and the government said we can do everything, we can do this, we don't need our European partners, we don't need them telling what we can do and everything. It's like, Jesus Christ, you guys are stupid. And we're going back again to the creation of transport and planes, that, we've got this global economy, but what we're doing is because we think culturally, and this is just my perspective at the moment, culturally, we perceive our culture to be better, so we'll preserve it, even if it's outdated. And I think if we look where everybody else is coming from and developing, there's a fear of industrialization from sort of like China and India, isn't there? And how they're going and the impact of the environment, because they're going through, they're delayed on their industrial revolutions, etc., but they're progressing quite fast. So they become a threat, and then when we look at Western culture, I mean, Western culture could be perceived as going down to the great decline, maybe like Rome. It could be falling down. So we've got the ability of breakout cultures coming from that. So I think as we're moving,
if you don't mind me open a bracket on this one, have you noticed or have you heard that France has been kicking out some of the country that they colonized and have some kind of economical agreement? France has been kicking out of Niger, Mali, Central Africa, all the countries that they have control over. They've been kicking out of them. So it's like, and then just to pick up of Niger, which is a country that is the fourth producer of uranium, whatever, like what they're using for like nuclear weapon and stuff, and then nuclear energy. So it's like France is dependent, basically exports over 38% of that specific element from that country, Niger. So it's like, I don't know what will come to France when it comes to this winter. That is going to be a challenge because they do not have access to the
fuel. No, absolutely. And I think this is what we see, isn't it, Aris? When we're moving forward and everything, I mean, just like you think about the richness of Africa and its history and how we've just sort of like mined and taken away and really historically damaged that and messed it up, as we went over there and colonized and everything, which is, not really cool.
Don't you think that the breach happened when the neoliberalism took over the civilization values and principles? Where do you think that the dissonance happened between, because like I said, people in Africa rather go for the East now instead of going to the West. And traditionally, we used to be linked to the West when it comes to culture, language, and all that. But they rather go to the East now.
Well, I think things change, don't they? I mean, if we look at the history of that, I'm quite naive in this area, but if you look at the history of that, if we dominated them, then you're going to have a natural rebellion against that at some point. So I think, and then if there's a realization that actually life could be better or different, and why go with somebody that punished you for a long period of time when there's something else that's coming up there, and maybe the trade restrictions and everything are a lot less, maybe the relationship to benefit or bringing capital into the country is better, you'd naturally go that way. So I think, what you see is, and if you think about it, if Western culture, if you look at like UK, you think about the empire that they had and how that has shrunk and that influence. And then you're right, we've still got sort of like French, Spanish, whatever colonies that are all apart. And they all seem to be either falling apart politically, and then the ruling government's going, we can't really manage this, we're going to get out and just leave them to fucking sort it all out like we did pretty much in Iraq or whatever, So it kicks off, and then we'll try and go in there, we'll try and subvert it, we'll try and get the mineral wealth, see how that works and everything. And then people will start to realize that what's going on here, this isn't a benefit to us. So I think what was is no longer, what will be is unknown, and I think just observing the way that it's changing, everything's in flux. I can't name anything now. I couldn't put anything in a specific ideology or an economic class. Those labels seem to be archaic now. It's like when we talk about family, LGBTQ, human species is evolving as well, and their relationships amongst each other. There's freedom and there's a lack of freedom, and I don't know. I become very confused in the direction of where it's going.
That is the best way to bring back my last question, my last point. So do you think that it is sustainable? Like the birth rate is dropping like in Europe and then the UK. The birth rate is dropping. Economically, it's like there'll be a challenge to support like the generation that is getting older. Do you know what I mean? And with the civilization, the Western civilization, when it comes to the culture, when it comes to the values, the principles, are being adopted by like African countries where most of the resources are, and then the Middle East and Asia. which China is raising as a superpower with a different type of culture, and Russia. So what do you think is, do you think that the neoliberalism and the capitalistic system that took over the governments, like in most of the Western countries, is sustainable when it comes to the family structure, when it comes to human beings?
I don't think anything's sustainable. I don't think we've identified a sustainable model yet. And what we've got to remember, I suppose, is any system that is created is created by somebody for a specific reason. So it's sort of like when we haven't hit the perfect utopia or utopian political system or an economic system. It's not there yet. We're still naive and we're like young children in the playground. Some of us are spoiled, some of us want more, some of us will pinch mateys, sweeties to have, so they're ours. There's that territorial stuff that's going on. I think the time that we've been on this planet to where we're at, and then looking at the remnants of prehistoric sort of like civilizations and everything that's there, we've not hit that. We're still learning. We think that this is the cusp of civilization, but it's not. We are still evolving into whatever it's going to be. So will it sustain? No, I don't think so. And I don't think that, I'm not saying that to be pessimistic. I just think that this is just a cycle of growth towards something which will hopefully be better.
Growth, decline.
Yeah, because it's not productive, is it? If you look at the damage that it's caused, not only to different individuals, communities, civilizations and countries, but also to the planet, it's not sustainable.
I agree.
So it's in flux. I think this is what people have got to understand. We're scared of losing something we think we had. We didn't really have it, like an identity or a culture that's always quite fluid. And we're moving into unknown. And we know that as a species, just all the books and knowledge that we've got is that we like to have a known. We're insecure in an unknown. But that's the direction we're going. And I think that's why we see a lot of people, sort of got the far right, got the white power and everything that's kicking up.
All over Europe, even in Africa.
Yeah,
people are going to like more, what's the word? Sovereignty.
Yeah.
To be sovereign as a nation, like identity crisis and stuff all over the places.
Yeah. It's fear. It's fear of change. And I think what you've got to do is you've got to embrace that. We know as a child that when we do our first thing, it's scary. The first time we fall over is painful, but we learn from that falling over. Then we know next time to pick our feet up or tie our shoelaces up or not tread in that hole. What we're doing is we're learning and we're experiencing. But sometimes we have a good time. Like, some people have parties. Oh my God, that's the best party of my life. I'm going to hold on to that memory forever. And it's just like, then you don't see the other things that are really good because you're too busy focusing on that. You miss the opportunity. So everything changes, our bodies change, everything changes.
Absolutely, yeah. So what would be the last word? What would you like to say on that topic, or what would you like to say for people that listen to it?
Yeah, I think if anybody's listening to it, I think the only time we've really got to be fearful is when all the rich people with all their money leave their planet because they've really fucked it up. So if Elon Musk and the rest of the billionaires start living on Mars, then we know probably that we're in for a shit time because they fucked up the planet and they're going somewhere else to find resources to, dominate and create their own utopia. That would be the scary thing. So,
Have you seen that movie? Just to finish up this conversation, I can't remember the name of it. With I think, wasn't it? I think Leonardo DiCaprio. I think.
Oh, the End of the World one. What's it called?
Yeah. I can't remember. That was the classic.
Yeah. It's exactly like that, isn't it? We just deny it. Then it's like, oh God, nobody's going to listen to us. We'll just have to accept it. Here it comes. Then bang, and it happens. Yeah. No, absolutely. And if people should probably watch, I forgot what his name is, Chris, doing, Planet or doing Earth, the new BBC, environmental documentary program, just about the complexities and the changes that the planet has gone through. Everything is in flux. Do you know what I mean? Everything is changing. We're only here for a moment. Once we realise that, and then things are probably might be a little bit better. But we've got a lot of baggage. We're still fucked up. We probably need a godlike psychiatrist or somebody to come down and give us appropriate counsel.
Probably
we'll see what comes out of America in regards to
Richie. Probably like the US suggested, some aliens.
Yeah, no, I was just about to say that. Yeah, they're probably waiting for us to be at a point of crisis, aren't they?
As a therapist.
They'll come down and say, right, you messed it up. It didn't work. We're here
let's start from
give
scratch.
you the opportunity. You screwed it up. Yeah. We're a
Anyway,
complicated
as usual, Richie,
species,
you haven't disappointed. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate that. I took you on short notice
No
and you
worries.
responded positively. I really appreciate it. So basically, what I'm trying to do is just trying to push like different narrative, perspective, asking questions that might seem to be difficult because of the political correctness at the moment. So we'll talk about different subjects. So
Yeah.
I was not trying to attack anybody, just talking about different facts, pushing my opinion, not even pushing my opinion, just to raise some point that can be relevant to the life of some people and stuff. And most of my show usually are like in French, but I decided to do a casual in English and then to have this kind of conversation about different topics that are relevant to all of us.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think that's one of the key things when you said about, these are our opinions, in presenting this. And opinions are formed from somewhere, it's where those opinions are formed from that, I think that's just, we've got to be aware of. And that's what we've got to reflect on. It's like, where does that come from? How does that inform me? And how does that impact others? Are we solution focused? Are we a part of the problem? So dialogue and communicating on an equal level is definitely the way forward, rather than being hidden in, well, I just was, we're hidden in the chat room alternative here, isn't it? But yeah, I'll have to go out and speak to the next person I see on the street, and hopefully
I think I'll do the same. Hello, you'll be like, you weird. Hello, you weird. I don't feel like talking to you.
So that's one thing. I mean, that's the difficult, isn't it? It's almost like we're stuck in a system that's going to take a lot to change it.
Oh yeah, I agree. Thank you very much, Richie.
No, thank you, buddy. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Yeah. So have a nice weekend, okay? Yeah, this was Nosology in the English version of it. So basically, I'm trying to reach different target markets as well, talk about issues that are relevant to every single one of us, which could be technology and then the capitalistic system. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much one more time again. And then hopefully we can have another show in English very soon. Bye.
You only see what your eyes want to see. How can life be what you want it to be? You're frozen when your heart's not open. You're so consumed with how much you get. You waste your time with hate and regret. You're broken when your heart's not open. If I could melt your heart, we'd never be apart. Give yourself to me. You hold the key. Now there's no point in placing the blame, and you should know I suffer the same. If I lose you, my heart will be broken. Love is a bird, she needs to fly. Let all the hurt inside of you die. You're frozen when your heart's not open. If I could melt your heart, we'd never be apart. Give yourself to me.